Hello, welcome to Bible Guru. Thank you for joining us on our journey through the Bible. Genesis chapter 26. There was a famine in the land, besides the previous famine in Abraham's time, and Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, in Gerar. We continue with this theme of legacy and inheritance. There's more than one kind of legacy and inheritance that we pass on to our children. The intentional and the unintended. One we give because we planned how to bless our kids for their future and for their progeny. But there's another, sometimes blessed and sometimes insidious, that we give unintentionally. That of our habits and our behaviors, both seen and unseen, the stories we tell, the decisions we make. Our children catch more than we may want them to from what they observe us doing. We may tell them to trust God, but we still kick and scratch and manipulate to get what we want. We say we believe in a loving God, and we believe in loving God as He loved us, and we believe in loving others as God has loved us. Yet we hold grudges, and we embrace bigotry. These choices and habits are passed to the next generation as well. And Isaac is no exception. Just as his father went south during the famine, once to Egypt, long before Isaac was born, and once to Gerar, shortly before Isaac was born. And both times, Abraham lied, saying his wife was his sister. Now it looks like Isaac is on his way to Egypt during a famine, and God intercedes. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land where I tell you to live. Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you, and will bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all of these lands, and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and will give them all these lands. And through your seed all nations of the earth will be blessed. Because Abraham obeyed me, and did everything I required of him, keeping my commandments, my decrees, and my instructions. So Isaac stayed in Gerar." God told Isaac not to go down to Egypt, told him to stay in Gerar, and promised him that he would bless him and his descendants. Please keep that in mind. Otherwise, what follows may not seem quite as wondrous as it really is. When the men of that place asked him about his wife, he said, "She's my sister," because he was afraid to say, "She's my wife." He thought the men of this place might kill me on account of Rebekah, because she's beautiful. When Isaac had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked down from a window and saw Isaac caressing his wife Rebekah. So Abimelech summoned Isaac and said, "Surely she's really your wife. Why did you say she's my sister?" Isaac answered him, "Because I thought I might lose my life on account of her." Then Abimelech said, "What is this you've done to us? One of the men might well have slept with your wife, and then you would have brought guilt on us." So Abimelech gave orders to all the people, "Anyone who harms this man or his wife shall be put to death." God told Isaac to stay in Gerar, and that he would bless him and his progeny. God spoke to Isaac in person. Still, Isaac was afraid. Let's look at this from two perspectives. One, shame on Isaac. He should have known better. The second, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Who hasn't trusted God and feared anyway? We're all like this. To me, this story is both confounding and comforting. I don't understand how someone with such a beautiful encounter with God could be afraid of circumstances and people. And yet I, who have a relationship with God, and have since I was a small child, have often feared people and circumstances. Encounters with God, unfortunately, do not make us perfect people. And better than that, our stupid fears and insecurities do not prevent God from working on our behalf and blessing us. So Isaac planted crops in the land, and the same year reaped 100-fold, because the Lord blessed him. The man became rich, and his wealth continued to grow until he became very wealthy. God promised, God fulfilled. Isaac was already wealthy with all that he had received from his dad. Now he continues the legacy of accumulating wealth. It looks like he learned those lessons also very well. He had so many flocks and herds and servants that the Philistines envied him. So all the wells that his father's servants had dug at the time of his father Abraham, the Philistines stopped up, filling them with earth. Then Abimelech said to Isaac, "Move away from us. You have become too powerful for us." So Isaac moved away from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar, where he settled. Isaac reopened the wells that had been dug at the time of his father Abraham, which the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham died, and gave them the names that his father had given them. Isaac, his servants, dug in the valley and discovered a fresh well of water. That would be running water, a spring of water. But the herders of Gerar quarreled with those of Isaac and said, "The water's ours." So he named that well Dispute, because they disputed with him. Then they dug another well, but they quarreled over that one also. So he named that one Opposition. He moved from there and dug another well, and no one quarreled over that, so he named it Room, saying, "Now the Lord is giving us room, and we will flourish in the land." For decades, plane manufacturers tried to design an airplane that could travel faster than sound. The problem was, as anything is moving through the air, as it moves closer and closer to the sound barrier, that speed is about 1,225 kilometers per second at sea level. Kilometers per hour at sea level. Both the air and the sound waves bunch up at the front of the craft, so that at the speed of sound, there is such turbulence that it creates great difficulties for the pilot and for the structure of the plane. To overcome these obstacles, aeronautical engineers designed the Bell X-1, a rocket-powered, smooth cylinder of an aircraft. And October 14th, 1947, Chuck Yeager flew it past the sound barrier, rocketing into the annals of history. God had promised, please, there's a connection here. God had promised to bless Isaac, just as he had promised to bless us. But with the blessings, with the progress, with the accelerations, come oppositions. As we accelerate, resistance and compression build up ahead of us. But it's through these pressures that we learn to design our life and our habits to deal with the strains and the turbulences of life. We become more airworthy. We become more able to move beyond what we or anyone else might have expected was possible. So back to Isaac. From there he went up to Beersheba. That night the Lord appeared to him and said, "I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you and will increase the number of your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham." Have you ever thought about God's identity? I've heard a lot of people talk about our identity in Christ, and this is a good subject to discuss. But I don't remember ever hearing a discussion about God's identity in us. But this is a central theme of the Bible. This is, I believe, you can check and see if I'm right, one of the first times that God says, "I am." The first time, if I have read it correctly, is in Genesis chapter 15, when God speaks to Abram. And we'll talk about that more in just a minute. And to Isaac, He says, I am the God of your father Abraham, and I am with you. If you ask a Christian who he or she is, you might get a variety of answers. I'm a teacher, or I'm a homemaker, a domestic architect, or even I'm a child of the Most High God. What if you ask God who he is? What's his answer? His first answer to that question is, I am Abraham's. In January 1989, I married a lady named Venita Thanikel. At least, that was her name at the beginning of the day. By evening, she was Venita Henson. She became identified with me. My name became hers. But there's more to marriage than one person's identity being kind of absorbed into another's. My identity was bound up in hers from that time forward. What she does reflects on me and my family. What I do reflects on her and hers. Over the years, we have both gone on for higher studies. If we go to a meeting together and someone asks for Dr. Henson, you don't know which one of us might show up. We are the bride of Christ. We are his people. That's our side of the story. What I think we too easily pass over is that he is ours. We are no longer two, but one. Jesus prayed about this in John chapter 17. He prayed for his disciples and he prayed for us. He said this, my prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I in you, that they may also be in us, that the world may believe that you have sent me. We are his, and he is ours. As the bride in the Song of Solomon said, I am my beloved's and he is mine. His banner over me is love. We bear his name, and he is inextricably bound up with us. This gives a whole new meaning to the phrase Jesus taught his disciples to pray, hallowed be thy name. We are the ones who hallow or defame his name by who we are and what we do. He belongs to us. What we do reflects on him. He is with us. We are with him. We need not be afraid. This is another one of those ideas that we'll have plenty of opportunity to explore as we go through the Bible together. When God spoke to Abraham in Genesis chapter 15, he said, do not be afraid. I am your shield and your very great reward. So we come back to Genesis chapter 26. At verse 25, Isaac built an altar there and called on the name of the Lord. There he pitched his tent, and there his servants dug a well. Abraham and Isaac both seem to like to settle where they meet with God, at least for a while. An attitude that prepares us well for heaven is to feel at home wherever God is. Verse 26, meanwhile Abimelech had come to him from Gerar with Ahuzath, his personal advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his forces. It looks like Abimelech is a king title or name. Abimelech means father king. So we see an Abimelech in the time of Abraham, which is about 100 years before this. And now we see Abimelech, but it's not the same person, it's just the same title. And then it looks like Phicol also is a title for the commander of the armed forces. So Abimelech, Phicol, the king and the military commander of this location, Gerar, they come to Isaac. Isaac asked them, why have you come to me since you were hostile to me and sent me away? They answered, We saw clearly that the Lord was with you. So we said, there ought to be a sworn agreement between us and you. Let us make a treaty with you, that you will do us no harm just as we did no harm to you, but always treated you well and sent you away peacefully. And now you are blessed by the Lord. Isaac then made a feast for them, and they ate and drank. Early the next morning, the men swore an oath to each other. Then Isaac sent them off on their way, and they went away peacefully. That day, Isaac's servants came to him and told him about a well that they had dug. They said, "We found water." He called it Sheba or Sheba. Sheba or Sheba means oath. It's really difficult to figure out the root or the history, the etymology of this word. So it can mean oath, promise. It can also mean the number 7. Here it probably means oath. Hebrew words have different meanings based on the context. There are limits on what the meanings can be, but this probably means oath in this context. So, Bir Sheba, or well of oath. And to this day, the name of the town has been Beersheba. Now, above we talked about the resistance to growth and moving faster. Here we see the results of changes that took place as Isaac learned how to thrive in despite of the resistance. Those who had sent him away now approach him again to make amends and to move forward. You may have heard stories of people like Abraham Lincoln, who lost so many elections and attempts at larger jobs, but he finally succeeded at one of the biggest jobs in the world and is recognized universally as one of the greatest leaders in world history. Or Walt Disney, very different kind of leader, who was devastated by a major loss in his early 20s that resulted in a creative spark from which Mickey Mouse, the character, came. And that was the foundation of what is now probably the greatest creative and entertainment megalith in the world. Or Steve Jobs, who was fired by the company he founded. But years later, he was brought back. And after he was brought back, he built it into one of the largest organizations that has ever existed. We all want to avoid the struggles that have the potential to teach us lessons that only failure and struggle can teach. We don't learn much from success or comfort, but we can learn quite a lot from strife and difficulty. Some of us don't learn no matter what. But if we are ever going to thrive and leave a legacy that will make the world a better place, the foundation stones of our success will be the struggles and failures that form us into the people who understand how to work hard and thrive in spite of what happens, rather than because of what happens. And finally, we get to the end of the chapter. When Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, the daughter of Beeri of the sons of Heth, and also Basemath, daughter of Elon, the Hittite, the son of Heth. They were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. We're not told what the source of grief was. When we marry a whole family. Maybe the wives, by the way, the plural there, wives, Esau's wives, that's a red flag already. Maybe they had very different family dynamics. Maybe they had foul mouths or didn't have the kind of respect for family input in their lives as Abraham and Sarah, Laban and Rebekah would have expected. Maybe they didn't like the same foods. We simply don't know. But my guess is that the problem was the relationship with God. Isaac and Rebekah had both encountered God. They were already moving away from the polytheism of their neighbors and of their parents. They were sensitive to the fact that God was directing and blessing their lives. They wanted this for their kids. They wanted this for their grandkids. Who you marry is so important when it comes to these issues. More on family dynamics in the chapter to come. Thank you for joining us in our journey through the Bible. God bless you.